A.B.I. here with another quick first impression. This weekend, Square Enix rolled out a closed beta for Dissidia NT, the third installment of Square's Final Fantasy crossover fighter, previously only released on arcades. Shoutouts go to New York's finest for the beta key. Shine on, dude. There's a few key differences between this Dissidia game and the previous games on PSP. Dissidia NT was developed for the arcade by Team Ninja, not Square Enix internally. The graphics and character models are actually really impressive. With Team Ninja at the helm, we might see something less than a 10-year development cycle. This is also the first Dissidia game to feature dual audio, which is great because I'm not sure if I can go another round of this.
Stars! Rain down! Burn!
The biggest notable change is that the game is now 3v3, 6 players in 2 teams of 3 each. To accommodate the new team play, mechanics have been greatly simplified down from the last 2 games. Although, given this game's staggering UI, I suppose simplify isn't the proper word here. There's a tutorial in this demo, but it really makes no sense to anyone who isn't already a Dissidia veteran, so I'm going to briefly explain the game's core system as simply as possible. Matches are decided when one team scores 3 KOs against the other. However, damage isn't dealt the way you normally deal damage in fighting games. There are 2 main gauges to pay attention to: your Brave and your HP. When you hit with normal attacks, you instead build up your Brave while chipping away at the enemy's Brave. Depleting an enemy to 0 Brave will result in a break, awarding you with a nice fat stack of Brave for yourself. To deal actual damage, you need to land an HP attack, which will cash out your current Brave as damage to the enemy's HP, then reset you back to 1000 Brave. So basically, use small attacks to build up Brave, use big attacks to cash out Brave as damage. This creates an interesting set of strategic choices for the player. Do you chip away at the enemy's HP using smaller but more frequent HP attacks? Or do you stack up enough Brave and risk everything on a single one-hit kill strike? However you choose to play the game, the one aspect I enjoy about the system is that by necessity, you need to land a big flashy finishing move to finish the fight. No chipping to death by zoning or death by footsies here. The very system of the game enforces its key visual trademark: cinematic Final Fantasy combat. The feeling of cashing out tons of damage on a single strike is the high point of any battle. This is the core of what you'll be doing in Dissidia NT, especially since a few of the combat features from the previous Dissidia games are no longer present. Pursuit attacks are gone, and characters no longer have an EX mode, which also means characters don't have supers either. Instead, characters have innate traits related to their base gameplay that give them unique specialties. You have characters like Onion Knight, Cecil, and Lightning who can class change in the heat of combat to gain access to a new set of moves. Cloud has the unique ability to charge any of his moves for extra damage, range, or area of effect. Y'shtola can sling spell after spell non-stop as long as she stays still. Squall can draw injunction spells off of players in order to gain buffs. Terra and Zidane have access to their Esper and transforms for a sudden surge of power and speed. And Tidus is just a slippery motherfucker who refuses to be hit. They've also stripped away most of the progressive RPG elements from the previous games. It used to be that you would level up characters and they would gain new moves that you could customize an entire move list to fit your preferred playstyle. Instead, characters now have a predetermined set of normal moves, and different pre-made loadouts that change their HP attack and their EX support abilities. Characters do still have a ranking that increases as you play, which might unlock more presets and more new attacks, but statistically nothing else changes. No equipment, no increase to maximum HP or other base parameters, nothing like that. The real big game changer is the new summon system. Summons in the previous Dissidia were underwhelming, to say the least. They used to perform some special function, like granting a buff or manipulating Brave totals by meeting certain combat conditions. While summons in Dissidia NT still provide a few passive benefits to your team, summons can also be brought into battle to wreak sheer havoc on the battlefield. And I'll just let this chaos speak for itself. But new systems aside, how is the game itself? Well, you can expect to be doing a lot of this while playing the beta. Having to matchmake 6 players instead of 2 means you can expect very long queues in matchmaking. Not that it's impossible to queue 6 players together in a timely manner. I mean, Overwatch can matchmake 12 players together in a matter of seconds. Matches can last anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes in a drawn-out battle to even just a matter of moments as one team overwhelms the other, which only makes the queue times feel even longer in comparison. But I also imagine this is going to be less of an issue when there's a much larger player base rather than a limited handful of players in a closed beta. The netplay is actually rather strong for there being 6 players present. The majority of games I played ran at a stable 60 FPS, and I rarely ever felt like my inputs were delayed or that players were being displaced or teleporting everywhere. However, every now and then you'll get a laggy game where the entire match will chug up, and if even one player has a bad connection, then you'll be experiencing something like this. Combat in Dissidia can feel awkward at first if you've never played a Dissidia game, and being the first Dissidia game on console, this will be the first Dissidia for many players. Attacks aren't quite as responsive as you'd expect from other fighting games or action games or even the Kingdom Hearts games. Instead of depending on the speed of your attacks, you'll find yourself anticipating the windup of your own attacks and the enemies, and instead using your considerable range to punish whiffs or to catch enemies off guard from angles they were not expecting. In a sense, the game can feel like playing a very slow game of footsies. However, once you learn how to cancel your attacks into dodges, the game becomes a back-and-forth fight of baiting and punishing, swooping out at just the last moment to counter, only for the enemy to do the same, and so on. The end result becomes something of a tango, where players take turns anticipating the next dodge or attack to see if they can catch the opponent misstepping and capitalize. Most basic combo attacks will send foes rocketing into the distance, so each successful strike sets the stage for another exchange of dodging and countering. However, it's important to take the environment into account. Slamming an enemy against the stage causes them to splay helplessly on the wall, allowing for a follow-up attack. At minimum, you can tag them for extra damage before sending them on their way, but with good positioning, you can potentially slam foes into the walls more than once, building up enough brave in the process to destroy them in a single combo. However, this delicate balance can sometimes get shattered in the chaos of 3v3 combat. There's little you can do when 2 players are targeting you except spend nearly the entire match running away, hoping your team can save you somehow. Sometimes you'll be in the middle of a tense sword fight when your team suddenly loses because the rest of your team lost 3 stocks. In spite of the excellent 1v1 gameplay, the most optimal strategy for a team of 3 is simply to create disadvantaged situations for the other team. Sometimes this results in 2 simultaneous 2v1 situations, where the one does nothing except run away and hope his team wins the other 2v1 happening. Ideally, the best matches came from when fights become a series of 3 simultaneous 1v1 fights, but the nature of the game makes it so that won't last long. Once a duel ends, the winning player flies off to join another fight, or a summon comes crashing to battle and throws everyone for a loop. The chaos can sometimes be fun in a Super Smash Bros. Kind of way, but unfortunately, because it's pretty much impossible for a single player to fight off 2 attackers, this often results in more flying around and fleeing. The developers have stated that they do plan to include a 1v1 mode, which is a nice change of pace. Even a 2v2 mode could be more controlled and would be better to strategize around. All in all, I think Dissidia NT will be a good game. Perhaps not a fighting game staple that will appear in tournaments, but at least as a good niche fighting game alternative. Once you get a grasp of the combat, the game really makes you feel as though you're playing a cinematic Final Fantasy battle. While I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, I do find the core gameplay extremely fun and a good concept of how fighting games can be different at a conceptual level. But for me at least, the greatest feature of this game is the ability to play as Lightning and not have to play Final Fantasy XIII. And that wraps up today's First Impressions. Special thanks to our patrons who continue to support us and make this all possible. If you've played the beta or have any questions about the beta, go ahead and leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more anime and game content from SugarPunch. I'm A.B.I, and
Stars, rain down!